Open Source Ecology's Collaborative Literacy webinar. It's our second one for the year of 2016. You can go on if we can paste the link, but the Collaborative Literacy webinar wiki page. See the agenda, and this video will be posted there so you can access it. The Collaborative Literacy webinar wiki page is the uniform place where everybody can organize around the webinar. Last time we talked about the roadmap, briefly going through the milestones that we have achieved and the 20 years ahead towards the open source economy. And today I want to continue that discussion with the most current project, which is the 3D printer. And that's exciting in the sense, some people might say, oh, it's kind of a distraction from our big machine work, but because the 3D printer is the most developed open source machine out there, or it's a robust and pretty much a mature open source technology. It allows us to go to the last enterprise development stages. Right now we've got 4 signups for the workshop. We've got actually 3 of those people are considering starting workshops in their own cities. So we're talking about, the concept is viral replicability criteria. How do we achieve a level of development which allows people to start up readily in different parts of the world, because after all, the final proof of this project is that it spreads in terms of its economic power. So I'll just talk very briefly about the collaborative methods here, how we work, and then go into the 3D printer and the developments required there, because that is the main effort right now in terms of being able to get a large group of people and also to get design sprints around that to create a well-understood collaborative architecture where people know where the project is, how they fit together, and so forth. So to start with, in a big overview with the Global Village construction set, there's 50 machines. Each one of them has many, many steps, and theoretically you can have a setting where everyone, well, the ultimate is, okay, you get a lot of people collaborating on a project, but the only way you can get that is if everybody understands what the development steps are, where the documentation goes, etc. So the open source product development method has to be known to everybody. What we have as our core tool in that, and let me see if I can share my screen. Let me share my screen here. Entire screen. I just want to get, yeah, this is the wiki. But the main, so we operate pretty much the wiki, the open source ecology wiki. Can people see that? Yeah, is the place where all the dump of all the knowledge that we have goes. You can start on the main page where you see that's our interface. But if you don't really understand how this whole interface works, it's hard to navigate because you have to have an awareness, and the front page doesn't do that. I mean, we'll get there eventually where we show people exactly how to, basically have a good diagram of the workflows. But until this present time, we're still developing things very actively. So the concept that we work on is modular breakdown of every technology to many, many parts. And what we do is there's a page called development template. And I'll just go through that. And the general idea being that you can take any machine or any submodule of the machine and develop it collaboratively with many, many people, but you have to know where to track it. So what we use is that development template. And if we, for example, take the 3D printer, there's a lot of different steps. Like this template has like 40 different steps, and then it has a bunch of different tabs on it. You guys can see that. It's got a number of different tabs where there's different viewpoints of additional steps. Like this is the basic development view of hardware. Then you get into, for example, the enterprise aspect, which is the kind of steps. Let me. Okay, I made it back here. Sorry about that. And I'm just checking, actually, interestingly, if you go to, let me share my screen again. Okay, I made it back here. Sorry about that. And what you hear is it's a live broadcast on YouTube. Sorry. So this is actually being broadcast live right now through YouTube at the other link that you can see on a Facebook page. So it's actually a decent thing. I don't have to worry about recording here. Let's see, but how come nothing is showing up here? Okay, let me go. Okay, back to sharing my screen again. I was explaining the development template meant out 3D printer right now. You can see on the front page there the first page of development. That means things like designs, instructionals, etc. We're 23% done, but there's many different task items, like starting with the requirements of the 3D printer. Number 2 is infographic. We don't have an infographic for the 3D printer. Conceptual design, while we know it hasn't been recorded in this box here. Module breakdown, if you click on that, that has been actually quite well documented, as in these are the modules that make up the 3D printer. So you get an idea that in this spreadsheet you can link to all the work product, and the last column has the state of completion from 1 to 10, and that's where you calculate the total done. And we're actually trying to get an automated burn down graph generated from a time history of how these steps get done, so that somebody can look at a page on the wiki which has all the burn down graphs, and you can see actually where the project is across all the projects, all the modules, all the projects that are being developed. So we go to the second tab. So there's a number of tabs for development. This is all under construction. There's a bunch of different views for the different things that are being developed. The event organization, that's particularly the topic of tonight. Mass creation of right livelihood. How can we get the 3D printer to be replicated? I mentioned there's 3 people looking to replicate the workshop already in different cities, but to do that, what do you need? I've defined something which is known as the viral replicability criteria, some of the key elements that are required, but essentially you can think about, we have to have a design. Let me go back to my video. See, my video is not working. Why is that? Okay, for some reason you guys can't see me here. I'm here. I don't know why it's not showing me. Okay, let's see. Okay, viewing troubles there. Okay, I want to talk about what are in terms of organizing an event, how is it possible that people actually collaborate on developing an open technology like the 3D printer, which is very far developed, and take it to the next level? And can that very model be competitive? Like the big question is, can we compete with factory production through a social production model where open source know-how is built in local communities? Now that's a big question. That's a question of developing the peer-based economy. Things like peer-to-peer foundation talk about that. We share. There's people talking about social production, reinventing the economy from scratch. But there's a big incentive for that in the sense that people have lost touch with their productivity, in the sense that a lot of people have virtual jobs, but there's a real desire in people to work with their hands or to be fundamentally productive. And we think that by involving the training and the social process along with production, that's the way to go into the future in terms of getting away from the consumer society that we have today. So there's potential there, but I think the idea is pretty new to people, and one of the things, so what I'll be doing, actually, I was working on this today, but I'm actually sending out a survey about, first of all, mentioning that we're starting this project on a 3D printer, and it's an open enterprise. And what would it take to attract somebody to such an event? What's the likelihood, just getting some market data, what's the likelihood that someone who has a choice to buy something at the store versus participate in the build themselves, what market is there really for that? So I was going to send out a basic survey that says, okay, what would make it attractive to you? Do you think this model of production has any chance of succeeding? And et cetera. Various questions about the feasibility of it, what people think. Would they participate in a workshop like this? Because that's important for our marketing. Who do we reach out to in the future as we try to replicate these workshops across the globe? And the plan for that is quite ambitious. So I also wrote up a business plan for this. Just some first notes. What does this look like? So let me actually share my screen again. So here we go with the business plan. It's just some basic notes. It's a presentation of 7 pages explaining the concept and trying to get it out there. So this is in edit mode here. Now, but at the last page number, so it goes through some of the concepts, some of the numbers. But let's go through the numbers here. I mean, we're looking at a model. Okay, so I talk about replicability milestones as one item. You can look that up on a wiki. There's the overall 3D printer roadmap for various steps. But what's the revenue model? So just to say that the rubber hits the road here, simply that we charge people admission to a build workshop, and we can charge anywhere from like $300 or something for a working 3D printer experience in 1 day. And 1 day is important because that's rapid. It's not like you're going to take 3 days, which is actually the typical. I know of no other workshops, and correct me if I'm wrong, that do a build in a single day, that offer an actual workshop to do that. So our unique proposition is, okay, we can build a decent printer in 1 day, and it works. Everything is optimized, including software on a live USB, so you don't have any software issues. It plain just works. We're including the automatic bed leveling with the first version right now. We're using an off-the-shelf printer, the Prusa i3, but it's our first step as we develop our own, which would really be industrial-grade, scalable 3D printer construction set. So much more ambitious than initial build, but we're getting along with the economics so we can develop a community so that we address the issue of continuous development. The issue with open hardware is that how do you fund continuous development, the product development? How do you build in revenue streams or feedback loops that allow the process to continue? Part of the project, part of the open source ecology issue is that all the time we have volunteers, then they come and go, and it's hard to continue. So at this point, let's talk about how do we sustain the efforts. So just to the basic model. The basic model is you can charge people for the build experience. They walk out with a working printer. And the value there is if you did that yourself, it'll take you about a week to do that. And you may not finish if you're a novice. I mean, it's non-trivial. You can say with all the elements considering mechanical, electrical, and software. But we're compressing a typical week's experience into a day, and people who don't, I'm encouraged to this experience. Or if they never thought they could build a printer, we're walking you through all the steps of the process. We ran a 3D printer workshop 2 years ago, 2014. We used the Lowsbot kit TAS, the TAS printer in a kit form. We charged $1,600 for that. It was $1,000 in parts, and we charged $600 for admission, and we sold out. Well, that price is now we're talking much different numbers. A basic kit right now costs $300, and we're charging in this first workshop $300 for the experience, with the intent that we're teaching everybody about the open enterprise. So take a look at the numbers. 12 times, say you're charging between 100 to 300. That's between $1,200 and $3,600 per event. And right now, if you look at how much time it takes to prepare, to streamline it, and to give you some examples of what that looks like, some of the documentation we have right now, build optimization. We have really optimized it to super clear instructionals where we actually have, we go back to the videos here. There's a build video. We have that in the development spreadsheet. But Joshua, who's collaborating with us here, he made instructions like, for example, here's the frame, about 1 minute, how you assemble the frame, etc. So for every little module that we have, you have a detailed instructional of how to do that. So there's a lot of preparation. I mean, to streamline it, absolutely, and also to make the software work and to add the bed leveling. I mean, we're expecting about 500 hours for the first workshop to get it. That's less than minimum wage, but in the evolved version, our goal is to get the organizational time down to about 3 or 4 days, then one day for the event. So we're talking about a week F, where if you have all the model in front of you when it's open source, when you can learn that, it will take a week of your time per month to run that entire operation, which is actually really good. That boils down to $30 to $90 per hour if you were to count the number of hours, and we're trying to give that all away. So the concept is first workshop March 19, one single event, and then just grow. I mean, if there's 12 people participating in a workshop, that means we're saying one person is going to actually take it on as a workshop. It looks like we actually have 3 people taking it on from the first workshop, so we're going to be at possibly 4 events in 2 months. So we're thinking about running the events every 2 months, but we're talking, thus meaning a doubling time of 2 months per year at a 16-fold growth. So the numbers can get really crazy here. And how is this possible? Well, because we're totally distributing it and empowering people to do it themselves. We don't have to run 64 workshops in March 2017. We're going to run one workshop, or maybe a couple, or maybe up to 4 or so. But it's everyone else is going to be benefiting. And the concept is to generate collaborative marketing. Like if we run the events on the same day, for example, we can all chip into the marketing. We have decent publicity channels through OSC. Our social capital is growing and growing. The collaborative marketing can happen together, and also the product development. If each one of us spends a little bit of time on contributing to the continuous development, then this business can take off, essentially achieve fusion. So we call the printer, we call it D3D fusion. Fusion refers to the spontaneous chain reaction here. D3D, D for distributive. But the fusion concept also applies to the idea that if we create a learning environment for people, and the instructionals are good enough, there's quality control, as people can teach each other how to build it. There's always going to be a person that works faster, and there's going to be others that can learn from them. So at best, I just want to show you where we're holding this thing. So we got a nice place at the Kaufman Foundation in Kansas City where we're going to hold the first event right here. It's a very nice place. This is better than Factory Farm still at this point, for all of you who have seen it. But fusion can refer to, imagine you can run an event where there's an audience full of participants and everyone succeeds at the build. And I think that's possible. At first, we're looking at having one instructor for like 6 people, but I don't see once the instructionals are perfected, the whole workflow is clear, and people start teaching each other, it could be that one single person is running a whole auditorium of people. So that could be an amazing case of social production happening. Can that replace the factory? Can we have meaning? Can we have productivity, learning at the same time? And we're saying that this is the natural evolution, because if people share openly, then you eliminate competitive waste, and you can get very far in a development process. So, but this all relies on the bootstrap funding here. Like in this case, there's definitely a clear economic case for people getting bootstrapped by the revenue that comes from the workshop. And our goal is to then offer more dedicated teaching experience for people who explicitly want to do this kind of enterprise. Right now, we're making the road by walking. We'll see after the first event what the results are, but we're going to make the road by walking, and probably at that point, certification would be a really good thing, where we can say, okay, we can certify, or say whoever's doing that, we can certify them to say that, okay, they've got open product, they have open process, they can deliver on a complete build in 8 hours, have happy people during the workshop. We want to certify that. We want to meet basically during, as we go forward, it's probably going to be that people come to our workshop, then they might want to get certified, or they can do this totally independently. We're not attached to it, but I think the service there is clear that if people do work with us, then we can do things like the collaborative marketing that can help everybody. So we can see how the certification mechanism, like once the project grows, would have to be sustained financially. So we can probably charge some kind of a license, not license, but a certification fee for anyone who wants to be certified, because it's a value. It's, you can see that, oh, you get publicity, you get credibility because you're following the standards that we have shown. So that's the general idea. A couple more things maybe. So on the steps of, I'll talk a little bit about viral replicability criteria and this thing of surveys. Like actually, so if you look at this post on the Facebook, we're starting with, we have to know our market. Like who, in terms of workshops, can we at this point say that we are the only workshop that delivers on a single-day build? Well, I mean, we've looked into this a little bit. There's 5 or 10 that I've seen. I haven't seen anybody who does it in a single day. There's one, the Troublemaker from Slovenia. I know they've done a build in a single day, like a long day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But those are all actually it's an electronics club that has done that. I'm not sure if that's replicable by normal people. Those people are a little more skilled than average. But currently, I mean, those people are not running these workshops as a regular offering. It was within their club. We don't know of anybody who's doing that right now. And the market research in the 3D printer workshop build survey basically asks you, okay, if you've ever run a workshop or participated in one, let us know how it went. How many printers were built? How many people participated? How long did it take? Did you actually do that in a single day? I mean, typically, we don't know of anybody. I mean, when we ran the workshop in 2014, that was a 3-day workshop, just for reference. So key, did everyone finish successfully? They make their first print? And what did they build? And basically some other questions poking at the feasibility of this model and what's the potential market for people adopting this. Like, what would it make the workshop, and what can it be an ongoing event? Can people see that that's worthwhile? You know, so that survey just collects some basic. We'll publish that in a month with all the results, hoping that we get some decent feedback. And now, as I mentioned, the other thing I will publish today is the survey of potential workshop goers or potential workshop replicators. So that means all of you people here, if you're interested in replicating, what are you looking for? Like, what would make it possible for you to replicate successfully? Is it the ability to learn how to build it and understand it? Is it more the marketing, or what are the blocks that you have? Like, or do you see that there's going to be revenue, or there won't be revenue in it? Do you believe in it, or what are the blocks? What do we have to address to make this happen? Talk a little bit about viral replicability criteria. And the concept there is, concept on viral replicability is that essentially the quality of the product, let's go into edit mode here, the product has sufficiently good as an absolute, so that's a wiki page by the same name, but essentially, what are the key elements? And I go through that, kind of trying to get that into detail. There's like 23 various items. I mean, you have to have open design, because if it were closed, nobody can replicate it, of course. There's other elements like you have to have a community platform for continuous development. You have to have product optimization. Modular design helps in that changes can then be made very rapidly. Um, Number 9, existence of a distributive enterprise or open business model around this product. Then quality control. I mean, how do you make sure that the thing actually works? The highest level in corporations is up to 6 Sigma standards. Well, you can Google that or look it up on the wiki, what Six Sigma is. But that means basically 3 errors per million. Like 3 out of a million won't work. Can we get to that? Is it possible, or is that crazy? If we have very detailed quality control checklists and people who can perform that during the workshop. You need other things like customer support. You want to have training for enterprise replicators, wiki for collaborative publishing, various things. One thing that's a definite challenge is how are we going to provide customer support? Definitely some kind of a forum where, in principle, if the community builds to a huge one, 24/7 there's a forum or IRC or hotline where you just get help immediately from the community. But the other part is continued product development. Because things change, you always need to upgrade things or just very basically maintain. So that has to be addressed in an open project. I mean, nobody's really done that. How do you do continuous development in hardware? I mean, I guess the RepRap project is the closest in that they have succeeded in pretty much open sourcing the entire open source, the consumer 3D printing industry, including the companies. The biggest companies of today are based on the open source RepRap project. That's MakerBot as well as Ultimaker. They came out of the RepRap project and things like that. But the idea of continuous product development, the RepRap community does it, but they don't work on any products. They don't have a distributive enterprise. They have a lot of designs that are floating out there, and some people end up maybe selling kits or running workshops or doing other things or starting companies, but there is no explicit mechanism that encourages that as a source that you can really sink your teeth into, because you can actually get teaching, get learnings, get taught to how to run that. Simply the idea of a distributive enterprise has not really entered consciousness. It's like we need collective human evolution of consciousness, of how we think, for people to kind of grab their head around it. Because right now I'm kind of struggling with how to communicate it, because that's why I want to do doing the surveys to see like how to communicate it, what's attractive about the value proposition to people. Do people think it's possible? Do people think it's unique and valid? So that's some of the main issues. Now, as far as maybe, so that's a brief overview. I mean, there's a lot to be talked about in terms of what the distributive enterprise could be. I mean, we're trying to, stepping out a little bit to a little bigger perspective. We're trying to really change the model by which demonstrate that a different model than factory production is possible. And if it's possible for the 3D printer, can it be possible for many other things? You can go into a workshop, build your own car, build your own house. I mean, we're actually going to be doing the Open Building Institute this year, where we're going to do a replicable model for housing, building on all the different workshops on housing that we had, including aquaponics. So this model can apply to just about anything. Many different areas of endeavor, essentially along the entire human productive economy. So the potential is great, and the idea is interesting, and right now it boils down to actually the traction, rubber hitting the road, in terms of people doing this. So you people, the people who are going to come to the workshop, do people actually take this on and make it go forward? Because it's, I can talk all I want about it, but it's, after all, it's about adoption. So maybe we can, so it's 8:30 right now, maybe we can spend a little bit on question and answer, maybe just 10 minutes or so, but then I'd like to get into, given that there's a whole range of different items that still need to be developed, mainly, I mean, there's things like even the supply chain. We buy the kits off shelf, but where things like backups of the supply chain or the marketing development. I mean, a lot of these things still need concrete work to happen, and maybe we can take a few questions and then actually get into. So in these webinars, what we do is, I mean, we talk and we create together. So the expectation is that we're dog fooding the entire process. We're creating, but then we actually get involved in all of us here, taking some steps to make it happen, because that's how we can grow this. So with that said, maybe I'll open this up to a few questions, and then we can start a doc. I see Jonathan. Jonathan, you're on there. Maybe you can start a Google Doc as we do the question and answer here. And maybe in this working meeting after the question and answer, we can just jot down a few things that are the key blocks or key requirements that would enable anybody. Like maybe we can start brainstorming about what are the blocks in people's minds towards the replication. What do you need to be successful at an enterprise like that? I mean, is it even, is the idea a bad one even, or like, do you want to do it on something else than a 3D printer? Maybe that's the block. The 3D printer, oh, it's not a powerful industrial machine. Maybe that's not good enough. What are all the blocks that people are thinking? So if we can get around that, part of the process is live collaborative editing. So Jonathan just shared a document, and we can actually click on that and go into editing, just type in, and we start creating. So perhaps a list of the key blocks. So maybe the title could be the key blocks to overcome in replication, something to that effect. I'm going to click on that right now. I clicked on that, and we have a presentation. You can. So Jonathan, I think you have to share that with everybody, because when I click on it, it's not it's only view mode. So if you can open that up, Jonathan, that would be good. But let's have a few questions. Let's start taking notes in that document. Let's see, Jonathan have. Okay, looks like it's shared. Is it? Is it editable? You should be able to get into the document, and we can start taking down notes. Even with the questions, if the questions are related to the blocks for this. So please go ahead. I'm opening this up to questions. You can unmute yourselves and shoot away at what are any issues, any thoughts about this, as far as what I've talked about and getting into eliminating blocks for replication.
I got a comment. Specifically about replication and what people might want to, like, will people want to do it?
So who's speaking? Introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah. I'm Israel. I'm here in Seattle, Washington. I'm going to be attending the workshop.
Welcome.
Thanks. So specifically about 3D printers, it seems like it's a very niche market even now, right? Like it's spreading pretty rapidly and whatnot, but I think it's still a very small niche of people that will want to do it. I think it'd be interesting to focus on something like tiny homes, which is also a niche market, but it seems like more and more people want to do it or can do it, have the ability to do it. I recently went to a tiny home workshop that was just packed. It was well over 100 people in a small workshop that was, only about 2 hours. And so many people had so many questions, and there were a lot of passionate people on both ends of the they were for it and against it. And I feel like focusing on something like that would be useful to more people. Right now might be better, I'm totally for the 3D printing just because I personally like it, and I know there are a lot of people that like it too, but you want to make something useful for more people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now the limit is you'd have to show us a set of blueprints and procedures that allow that to happen in a rapid fashion. I mean, they're not, like, for example, we're working on a microhouse, right? We've got the Open Building Institute popping up. Katrina here, my partner, she's going to deploy that, get that website up in a week or two. But the basic question is, where's the design that we can use? because nothing is at the stage where, like, for example, from whoever else is doing their blueprints are not open source. So we have to have the level of perfection and proven product that makes it acceptable as a powerful economic contender. We don't have those plans right now. We've got a bit of them. We've got quite a bit. We've got a few modules that we have developed and using this entire modular building system. So that lends itself to wide replication, but it's just not there yet. That's the bottom line. And when it will be, yes, it will. Everyone needs a home. Not everybody needs a 3D printer, but everybody needs a home. The market there is trillions. It's like $1 trillion market globally. So we definitely did that. And right now, one of the things, just to comment on what's happening right now, the 3D printer is so small and manageable that it's a low risk experiment. The entry barriers there are very low, like $300 to start building, as opposed to a house, which is going to be much more. So there's that element of low access barriers and quick iterative prototyping that we can test these methods of how we get people gathered around an open hardware project and make it so it's fast it can happen. Yeah. But yeah, appreciate that comment though.
Marcin, I have a couple of comments. First of all, guys, I'm Joshua
Yeah.
Langevin. Good to meet y'all. I think on that subject, it's important that we spend as much time on documenting the method of how to do a workshop and make that as modular as possible as well. And that way we can take the entire model that we're using for 3D printers and say, okay, let's use this exact same model but scale it up and make it for tiny homes or for the torch table or the power cube or whatever it is you want to do.
Exactly right. The process documentation is critical, and we have a little bit of, so just to ground that, there's the spreadsheet that I mentioned, so I'll paste that. So this spreadsheet that I am pasting in, that's the development spreadsheet. The second tab of it is called Event Organization. It's a mess right now, and we can, maybe if someone gets inspired to keep, it's a work in progress, right? So, but in it, you see a number of steps that we're doing, and many steps are maybe missing insofar as an overall organizational process for doing that. And maybe the first thing to do there is basically like a operations startup guide, a little startup guide. I mean, I don't think there's anything very specifically like a see, like what we're talking about is essentially like a operations manual for how you go from A to Z. So how to, I don't think it's even one of the elements in a spreadsheet in the event organization, but there's many elements that we are recording, such as how we selected the printer. So we have things like risk assessment, how do you secure a venue for the event, how do you do an announcement draft, publicity strategy, promotional video, a few elements, analysis of industry standards, meaning like what are all the other workshops that we're competing with right there? What's our unique value proposition, product strategy, event branding, things like that. So there's many details that get technical. You can really get granular in terms of all the different things about the organizational plan. But maybe, Joshua, maybe one of the things is, just start a document and say, okay, here's the 1 or 2 pager on how do you run a workshop. That's probably a very valuable thing for everybody. What is the basic overview? We've talked about it a little bit, but we got to ground it, make it very tangible, make it grounded and simple to follow, and make it presentable so we can use it easily.
Yeah, it would be maybe a good opportunity to record a little video on the subject while we're all together on March 19th.
Okay. So that'll be a good idea to do that. So in the document itself, so I'm going to start I'm going to put in a slide in there. I'll share my screen. But you can feel free to edit. But Okay, so what do we call that? The how-to organization how-to. Like, Joshua, what do you call it?
It'd be the workshop quick start guide.
Workshop quick start guide. So that sounds good to me. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because that's a relevant question.
The first step would be to define your product and figure out a way to communicate the idea as clearly as possible to people so that you can generate excitement about it. So first would be identify the product or the project.
And are we assuming that that's the 3D printer right here? So let's be specific. If we're talking about identify the product, we have that, right? So it's right now it's the Prusa i3 printer, and go from there. So I mean, I can tell you my experience. So it's like some of the first things is you have to define the enterprise model. If this is it's not just a workshop; it's a workshop enterprise. That means it's actually self-sufficient in funding. So define the enterprise model. So basically do event announcement. What else is there? Run the event. I mean, we can get as granular as we.
Yeah,
Run
then it would
enterprise
be
models.
select the location, and then you have to just see if it's going to be a multi-day event, what you're going to do about lodging, if anything.
Run event and collect data at the end. For collecting data, we actually have yeah, I mean, so for example, this Workshop Enterprise Quick Start Guide would be A through Z. You have to get pretty, we can, this is the rough layout. And I'm kind of brain dead. I can't think about this right now. But let's start. Let's see. Do we have a page on comments? OSC Texas should maybe. So what I'd like to know, like who out of this. Let me start a new page here. Let's document this. So I'd like to ask a very simple question. Who is seriously considering running one of these workshops in the future? So potential replicators. I've heard from Jonathan that he wants to take it to Texas. Joshua, so are you seriously considering running this in like, say, 2 months after the first one?
Yeah, I'll definitely run one.
I am. I can access the document. I don't know why you did it.
To access the document, go into the chat. Can you see the chat box in Google Hangout? If you.
I'm on Android. It's different on Android.
On
But
Android,
anyway.
you're on a phone. I don't know. You might have to. If the text box doesn't show up, you have to make it show up. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been looking for it since I got it.
Yeah. Well, I can. Yeah.
It's okay. I'm just saying I'm down. I
So
might
you're
even do it right now.
Where are you located?
I'm in Toronto now, so great big city, lots of people anyway.
Sorry, so introduce yourself to everybody. Anthony.
Okay, I'm Anthony Douglas. I was at Open Source Ecology almost 2 years ago, I guess now, for a couple months. So I'm still very interested in it, and I've been pursuing open source enterprise ever since to a greater or lesser degree. I worked on.
Tell us more about it.
Sorry.
Tell us more about your involvement in enterprise issues.
Okay, so when I left Open Source Ecology, I visited a lot of makerspaces. Eventually, I went to Toronto, and there's one here called Site 3. I joined up, learned to use the milling machine. Then I went to one in Winnipeg, which has got all kinds of milling machines sitting around doing nothing. And I tried to make tables. I did a couple other things. Again, they were going to be open source. It was going to be an open source enterprise. But I had to leave Winnipeg, and I went to Vancouver for 4 months. I made a few things, but in the end, I haven't really succeeded in getting an enterprise off the ground. So
how far, like for example, on the product are you? I mean, because that's the first thing is that you got to have a product.
It was hard to find collaborators, so I had to sort of dumb it down a lot, and I ended up making I was just making other prototypes for other people in Vancouver mostly. But the products I was making were extremely simple. There was a bicycle pump, for instance. The point was that it was cheap to machine. You can machine things out of cheap materials and sell the resulting product for quite a bit. And then you can publish design. Somebody else with a machine tool can make them.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting. It was a great idea, but I didn't really work out, mostly for my own health problems in the end. I had to move away from that. But I've still very much got my eye on the whole thing. And I've been,
yeah, no, that's good. And the theory is, it's like we only need so much effort. I mean, if it's shown that the revenue, the positive capital feedback exists, then it can take off. So
yeah.
Exciting. So we've got 3 people looking at replications. We haven't heard from Tom. Tom is not on the anyone else who's considering that perhaps within the we're looking at the first event March 19, and 2 months after that, let the dust settle a little bit, probably prepare actually the next iteration, because I mean the limitation, in my view, for the initial 3D printer is, if you talk about quality, is there's 2 things missing. We're already adding the bed leveling, so that's good. But we'd like to have an enclosure, because if you're printing large things, you're going to need even heat. Like, it can't just start warping on you. We're talking about things like polycarbonate greenhouse panels. So we need the print quality to be really high. Polycarbonate is a thermoplastic, so it can be printed. And then you're talking about crazy productivity if you can do that. The other element that's missing from the current design, the Prusa i3, is the platform, which needs to be stationary. The platform in the current printer moves, which means that you get some quality decrease. You get, for example, a object. Like, think about you're printing a pane of polycarbonate glazing, and that thing is moving. That thing is going to fall off and wobble. So that's the idea.
Marcin,
we got to have a stationary. All the professional printers.
On that subject, why is it you didn't go with a Delta style printer with a stationary bed?
Right. So Deltas, I wouldn't call, so there's a little bit of selection, but Deltas, and you can actually do that. Look at the rationale in the development template under the development. It's somewhere in there. I think it's under event organization, Prusa i3 selection. There's some notes on that. But the Delta is not specifically an entry-level printer. It's a little harder to do, and it's harder to calibrate. So we know that the most Delta people in University of Michigan are doing that, but they're running 3-day builds. So it's a little beyond. So to do the simplest entry-level, that's also Cartesian in the sense that the basic XYZ right angles for ease of scalability, like various things. I mean, you of course you can do it with a Delta, but to keep it simple and mostly about simplicity at this time, where it would just take longer to build this. So, and you can say, well, why this Prusa i3? Well, it was a recommendation from the RepRap forums. And we had to basically just dive into something that had a good reputation, was well proven, because to get our specs into place as an infinitely scalable, totally modular device, we're going to change things. And we're going to push the limits. I think we're going to really innovate on the modularity aspects, meaning that the design for all the axes is going to be quite similar. We've got some ideas on that. That's another technical discussion, but we'd like to do something that you can scale, modify, and we present a construction set within FreeCAD, the open source software, so that anyone can manipulate it by using known parts. So we do the engineering, we put it all into FreeCAD, teach everybody FreeCAD, and you can design and build any kind of a 3D printer, from a little desktop thing to one that you can print car body panels or this polycarbonate glazing or whatever. So that's a discussion there. So let's move on to Chris Lacey. So you're considering that. Tell us more. And maybe actually this is good to talk about what's the biggest challenge. So for everybody that's talking here, I'm actually going to start with myself. My opinion on the biggest challenge is the market, because I think we can nail the product, but at the end of the day, if this is going to scale, we need to get the word out. So I think the biggest challenge for us is going to be marketing, along with getting the open source 3D CAD, make a construction set in there, but that's technical. We can do that. Okay, Chris, maybe tell us what you think, what your thoughts are, and what the biggest challenge to you would be. Yeah, we can't hear you though, so maybe you can. Yeah. Okay, Christopher can't really speak. You can communicate in the text box if you can, but type there. Well, Jonathan, what is the biggest challenge going to be for you? Joshua, you too.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to leave you hanging there.
Yeah, sorry.
I think marketing is probably going to.
I think marketing is probably.
We need to be able to present this to people in a way that it quickly makes sense to them, what we're trying to accomplish, and kind of sell them on the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And marketing does cost money. Some of the best ways to do it are with Facebook, using Facebook ads. They attract quite a bit of attention. So I'll probably end up doing some of that. And obviously advertise to some of the maker spaces in the area. So any like-minded communities, or any communities that are interested in eco-friendly activities, or any magazines along those lines might be good places to start.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think so. Let me comment on the marketing part. So if you go to my log, so one of the collaborative literary aspects is log on a wiki. So Marcin log on a wiki. You can see what I've done today. So I did list of publicity venues. So I'm actually starting the list of, let me share my, am I sharing? Yeah, I am. List of publicity venues, which is accessed through my log, which is Marcin log on the wiki. Click on list of publicity venues on Monday, February 9th. So start your logs, everybody. I know Joshua's got one, Jonathan, myself. Okay, list of publicity venues, list of open hardware groups, book groups, etc. There's I'm just keeping track of various venues where we have contacts, and which, I mean, the step number one is list the venues. Step number two is then you ask, well, do we have access to those venues? Well, we have to build relationships. There's a lot regarding the regenerative economy, like so I'm listing like Facebook pages here. We share participatory economics, sustainable business network, peer-to-peer foundation, open source circular economy. Start by listing. So I would really encourage you to go as a homework assignment from this, because marketing, I think, is going to be one of the main things. Look at what I've started already and contribute to that. Just edit it. The wiki's openly editable. Edit it. Like, for example, there's a lot of consciousness types of groups. Like, the only one we have really good contacts are Waking Times on Facebook. They have 900,000 viewers. We got a good insight there. Things like that. We have to start developing relationships. Like, for example, my strategy with Waking Times. One, we can post, get a person named Dylan there to, he's a blogger, to publish things about us. when you meet a person like that, talk to getting his friends on board. So, okay, who are other bloggers and who are other authors? So develop an army of bloggers and supporters that can publicize for us, and that starts with just getting lists of all these different things. So I encourage you to do that.
Oh, hey,
Now,
Marcin.
Yep.
Also, podcast, different podcasts. Like I listen to this podcast called Hacker Public Radio, and it's a community supported radio where everybody, all the episodes are done by somebody who listens to the podcast. So basically, I could make a podcast about you guys specifically, like maybe the workshop even. And I think that would maybe reach out to a lot of people too, you know?
Absolutely. So this is where the collaborative effort, I mean, if we get all of us working on this, I mean, this is going to go viral. So that's the potential there. So, okay, so there's, just added that, start editing that. So it's called Hacker Radio.
Yeah, Hacker Public Radio.
Hacker Public Radio. Let's get on that and talk more about that. So podcast that, so Israel, for example, you can get on that and talk about us, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and see, we each of us have certain these venues that are already in our pocket, and I mean certainly with OSU that ends to some places as well. So we can do that. I mean, we've got about 50,000 people on Facebook. We want to continuously grow that, but it's something we can all work on and help each other. Especially if the workshop is on the same day, we can say, okay, whoever's publishing about that, they can say, okay, and we've got parallel events going on in different places. So in some way you can say, oh, well, that's competition, but in another way you can say it's expansion, because it depends how you think about it. I think it's expansion because the more people know, I think the idea is so new that, yeah, it's more important for people to find out about the concept and for people to start believing that than the fact that we're competing with one another, which I mean, I don't believe in. It's kind of you have to get into a mindset of kind of abundance and collaboration. That's part of the keys to why this open source collaborative literacy is difficult. Most people are really entrenched in just competing and wasting time. So, Jonathan, did I hear you piping in on what the big challenge for you is going to be?
I was, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just having a problem, I guess, getting through some technical difficulties, but now I'm on slide number 8. As far as the marketing aspect, I think the biggest questions that I have are partially dealing with, of course, the product applications, and I haven't built the 3D printer yet. Hopefully do that in the next week. But definitely the product applications, you know, how useful is the 3D printer from one standpoint. From a marketing and business standpoint, that's a huge proposition there, other than being able to pitch it as an educational experience, as well as a bootstrapping educational experience for people.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on 3D print, on the customer base or the marketing? And do you think you can get 12 people in Houston?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty spread out. So, I mean, there's definitely a huge market in terms of people wanting to experience it. I think the biggest thing is being able to market it, finding the right segment of people that we're trying to reach. As we talked about, someone mentioned before, 3D printer has been kind of distributed about, but we're not just pitching. For myself, I'm not going to be just pitching that. A lot of it's going to be about learning to work, you know, leadership and training, as well as even the aspect of being able to build something and having that experience. So, I mean, I'm really selling the experience for people in that aspect. So, but also too, it's a stepping stone for other things. I mean, it's the gateway, the gateway drug to other types of building. I mean, from any kind of CNC type of application. So from a marketing standpoint, I don't think it's going to be too difficult to find people. That I think the key question that people are going to ask is, you know, what can I make with it, you know?
Yeah. Right. It would be very useful if, I mean, there is a page on the called, so I keep track of all this on my log. I put up a page called Useful 3D Prints, Useful 3D Prints right there yesterday. I'm just trying to keep a list of these things. Like, for example, did you know that somebody 3D printed a polycarbonate 500-pound jack? So that's pretty
Oh, wow.
cool. You can do aerial drone quadcopters, aerial drone wings that can go 100 miles an hour, adjustable wrenches, safety helmets, welding mask, grafting tool, cordless drill. Nobody's done that. You can do a nutcracker, scissors minus the blades. Compost shredder. Check out this compost shredder. That's pretty cool. It's 3D printed and it grinds bones. It loads up here, but this is an example of a thing you can grind bones with. They have videos on that. That's pretty cool. But see, this is where the full high-quality industrial printer really gets to be important. Like, I'm thinking about rubber tires, thermoplastic elastomers. You can 3D print those. So talking about tracks for our tractors, and the glazing, and large objects like conical tanks, compost bins that you get at pennies a pound if you recycle plastic. So we have to add the recycling infrastructure, the Philibot, like the recycling. Philibot is a. Did you notice I'm using IX Quick? It's an encrypted browser web search. Philibot.
Marcin, I'm very interested in the filament extruders, and I've contacted a few people who are making these, or have been working on these machines that you can at home put plastic bottles in, shred it up, and will make 3D printer filament.
Oh man, and that's huge, because then you get the whole, like, I get a lot of questions. Well, plastics are nasty. But we can pitch it as we're environmental because we're cleaning up waste plastic and reprocessing it into useful parts, and that's going to be a huge selling point. So we should, I would suggest that if you, so here's an exercise. If you can handle, so there's the development spreadsheet. This thing, just copy it and maybe start developing and keep track of it. Keep track of it on your log, and let's start developing it. Maybe we can get a development group working on the Philibot or whatever, the recycler infrastructure. So, for example, there, Joshua, I mean, is any of that fully open source, or is it under wraps? I mean, that's a huge question all the time.
There are some really strong links to the open source community. And I actually had the opportunity to talk with a couple of the people in person. And they definitely seem like the right kind of people for this project to help out. So I can, as soon as I have my 3D printer up and running, that's going to be my first thing, is figuring out how to use recycled plastic as filament.
Yeah. That's a big one, because right there, talk about recycled CDs. That's polycarbonate. Free glazing at a cent a pound for the electricity it takes you to grind it up and extrude it. So yeah, there's good potential there. I was looking into rubber. You can get thermoplastic elastomer for under $1 a pound. So we can be talking about realistic rubber tracks that are huge. I mean, they're going to be huge for the tractors, but they're 3D printed and rapid prototyping. Can that be done in a distributed fashion? That's a good question. So I think there is good applications. You can make the extruder big, so you're just spitting out a lot of rubber. You can make it really fast. Just I think the industry is in its infancy, and everyone's developed the small desktop models because that's what they have space for. But I think getting to the industrial scale applications is really, really important and possible, I think. I mean, it's like having injection molding, except you're just spitting it out of a nozzle, and you have full control over that. So that's pretty good in an enclosed chamber. That's why we're talking about the enclosed chamber. You can just get that going and make it work very well. So yeah,
I just have a few questions as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what are some of our goals? I mean, as a collaborative community, what are, I mean, I know we've got a lot of people on here, but I'd like to hear kind of like what can we, I mean, each person, you know, who has to contribute something, and I'd like to hear what should our goals be? I mean, is it, I know that you mentioned about being able to replicate, how many workshops we want to replicate. What are some of our goals as a community that we can all talk about?
Anybody?
Well, you know, I thought about this a lot, and I always thought that in selling this idea, there undoubtedly will be people who raise the objection, well, by definition, doesn't your business model end and you're putting yourself out of business by teaching everyone how to do what you're doing? And I thought to myself, well, wouldn't that be a great world to live in if
Exactly.
everyone could create everything? So yeah, that kind of is the goal, and maybe that's the idea that we have, you know, try to sell.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it, so one of the goals would be what, to be financially successful, right? And I think that's part of the proposition is that, yes, we definitely want to transform the world, but we also, too, want to stay in business. I think that's the aspect that we're trying to do to stay relevant is, one, if we do begin to build these workshops, then we're going to go and innovate on new products. I think that's one of the milestones as well. I don't think it's just a matter of going out of business and whatnot. I think it's a matter of innovating and making the 3D printer better, and then from there we can bootstrap to other things. I mean, for myself personally, one of my goals is to be able to manufacture anything. But right now the 3D printer is not up to speed, and there needs a lot of development, and so
Jonathan,
just want to put out.
Sorry, what you wanted to build, because you just cut out for me right there. What did you want to
I
build?
want to be able to build anything. I want to be able to build anything. You know, in terms of if I need a part or something, I want to be able to build it without having to go to Walmart.
Yep, that's a good vision. And the direct, actually, talking about the product ecology, there is a direct ride into the CNC torch table. Because for the enclosures, the simplest way to do it is just plain 1/8" steel, which is super cheap and super sturdy. Make the enclosure out of that. And that means we're cutting it with CNC, and the larger 3D printers are essentially platforms for holding a CNC torch. So it goes right into building both a CNC torch as the machine and a CNC torch to cut parts for the 3D printer, and then for other machines. So that goes to the torch table, and then to tractors, which we can then rapidly fabricate. Right now, we're kind of waiting onto the goal right now is, okay, we got the 3D printer, distribute that, CNC torch table. From the CNC torch table, you go into rapid development mode on all the heavy machines. That's the simple idea at present. And then that means agriculture, like with Alec here, testing and using our machines, and so forth. So there's definitely a continuation. You should see it as, man, if we succeed getting ourselves out of business, that's awesome. But of course, we'll always innovate, and of course, to the point of market substitution across the board. So talking about down the road, the open source economy. So the benefit can be huge, and we don't. I mean, as long as our thinking is straight on idea that it's good to collaborate and do better as a group, then I think we can succeed. But once again, it's tough for somebody. I know that it's very tough for somebody to grasp it, because of course, as you said, Joshua, someone will say, "Oh, well, then you're going to just run yourself out of business."
Well, I think the other proposition there is too is that with this particular printer, I got the parts and they're 3D printed parts. So I think that's pretty cool that if we have a collaborative group of people and I need parts from somebody, my printer's down or whatever, or I needed a whole bunch of things printed, definitely I can go through our community rather than just to one source.
Yeah. There's also the aspect of rapid prototyping. Of course, the 3D printer can be used to make little models, scale models of tractors or things, or all the machines. So my goal is that we're able as a group to collaborate rapidly, like real time, across the world. Just, okay, we got some project, bam, we have all the prototyping capacity in the world, and so forth.
Hi, Israel back here again. I'd also like to comment on just the power of what you're building seems to enable people to restructure the way we organize everything. You know, you're reorganizing the economy. You can reorganize the way micro communities, you know, organize. You can build micro communities everywhere if you have all these tools, right?
Yeah,
Once you
absolutely.
have micro communities everywhere, you know, anybody can go to wherever they need to go to do what they need to do and have the tools they need to do it, right? Um,
Absolutely.
so
Idea
once you're
being,
reorganizing micro communities, you can even reorganize, you know, the way cities build their infrastructure too, right?
that's right. That's right. I mean, the ramifications of having control over the material world around you are significant. That means from the hardware comes economies, comes infrastructure, comes politics. And some people say that, oh, well, you have to be enlightened or you got to reach first to evolve, like spiritually or personally. But I think that's too hard. I think it's easier to access that through the material world because we have needs, very basic needs like Maslow's pyramid. But yes, the end goal is self-determination theory, the pursuit of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's the true drivers. We know that.
Just want to pipe in real quick on that. One of the things as an organization, what we're trying to achieve is high-performing collaborative teams, and so
Yeah.
you know, having everyone here on board, one of our goals is that when we come on to a Google Hangout, that we actually can demonstrate what it looks like to actually do successful design sprints, as well as even having each one of you not only vetted but understand the process of what we're doing to be able to perform at a high level, so where that time management is not too much of an issue. So that's one of our goals that we'd like to see, is for each one of you to, one, become engaged and develop the skills where we can actually work as a community when we have a project that we can spend an hour and knock out something that would normally take 100 hours. So one of the goals that we want is, as far as a collaborative literacy, is like, how do we work together as teams? How do we take those skills and master them, and how do we replicate those skills to each other? So that's one of the things that I want to present to each one of you guys here, is to really think about that, and each one of us have something to contribute. Again, a lot of us don't know each other, but that's the beauty of joining together. So really would like to hear from other people who haven't had a chance to talk, because your voice and what you have to say does matter. So if anybody has anything to say, please pipe in.
Hi, Jim. Jim Quaid, Cave Creek. One of the things you need to do in a successful teaching effort is to understand the level of your students. So having prerequisites for your student body, knowing where they are, how literate they are about the 3D process. You really need to have more of a geek community, somebody who is technically oriented. So there need to be some prerequisites done, maybe some CAD background or Arduino background, and be able to say, look, if you have to have at least this level of understanding of the technology to have a successful experience by doing this one-day build. So that's something else we have to be careful about, because we just can't go up to somebody who, gee, thinks it's going to be a neat idea and have some success. Your thoughts?
That's part of the training infrastructure that needs to be developed by all means. It's part of the whole collaborative architecture that we're trying to develop. It's got so many elements. It's really trying to develop a whole infrastructure for how to do open source product development when people don't know what that word is. So there's a lot of definitely huge cultural barriers from how people are used to thinking. So first we need to wash out people's brains and then fill them with something new. It's a big question. What I would say for this group, kind of to wrap up, actually, because I gotta get going, I would say that let's look at some of the tools that exist, and it's like conceptually super simple. You got the wiki, you got the development template. We know we've got a lot of different tasks on the 3D printer. one thing is to orient ourselves first. How to, what's been done and what hasn't. You can look at my log, and you can look at the D3D development. Orient yourself by going to a page called D3D development, which has this spreadsheet with everything in there. But from then, it's like we have to pretty much step up to the plate and say, okay, let's organize this team. So what are the basics? Start a wiki account, put up a work log. Also sign up on the D3D page. There's a team charter. Go to the team charter and write down your commitments. The team charter is an organizing document that shows some of the vision of the project, and you can start by saying, okay, I'm going to commit to doing this. So that's a start of a team. So we encourage you to do that. And I would wrap up with saying, okay, there's design sprints. So right now we know that the publicity is a huge deal. I showed you the link on my log as far as what publicity we're reaching after, and we're doing what we can right now. We've got the announcement, we Facebooked it a bit, and trying to do whatever publicity we can. But add to that list, maybe make it a task to add to that. And what I would suggest is maybe this Friday. So Friday we're supposed to have design sprints. Let's do that this Friday at 5 p.m. And when we meet for the design sprint, so I'm going to announce that on a Facebook page and all that. But in a design sprint, let's see what we bring to the table in terms of where we are from here, and starting to fill in some of the missing details. There's people working, like Joshua, working on the videos. We're actually going to do another build document more here. We're working on a publicity. We're working on a bill of materials. So orient yourself by looking at the development template and see what gaps there are and what you're encouraged to, what you think you can contribute. But I would suggest maximizing the time on the publicity, just developing the big list of publicity venues that we can then start reaching out to. Because if we talk about beyond this workshop, every 2 months, well, for every workshop, we're going to have to do the blast of publicity. So what would that look like? I mean, we should probably talk about press releases for the future. Like if we say that if actually 4 workshops are happening after this single one, that's a press release right there. That's pretty notable. And if we continue from there, maybe from 4 to 8, that's good. But I would say let's call this a night and meet again for the design sprint, where the expectation for the design sprint is to treat it as more of a product demo, like in a Scrum methodology. So until the Friday, we know what the tasks are. Of course, you can feel free to contact each other and me and put comments on Facebook and on the wiki page where there's a comment box, or document or in the documents. There's also an OSE Facebook workshops group where we communicate as well. So make yourself at home at all these places, and I would say let's meet again. It's kind of general instructions, but there's a lot to the method, and kind of takes getting steeped into it to get familiar. But I would say let's see what we can do on the publicity in terms of getting the specific lists of things, lists of venues that are really robust, and maybe committing actually to sending out some announcements. Like you can feel free to copy our posts, share our posts, reach out to those places that you know already. Because if we're going to succeed, we're going to need to first populate this workshop. We have only 4 registrations at this point. We need a few more. The initial goal was 12. So after 1 week, we've got 4. So that's pretty decent. Typically, it's a linear growth towards the workshop. But let's work on the publicity and do what you're inspired to do on this, and treat the Friday at 5 p.m. as a product demo, where we come in and talk about, okay, what worked, how we, what we have done, maybe some suggestions of what can be done better. We've got some commitments in this document today as far as who else is going to try to run workshops in the future. And right now we've got a list of Jonathan, Joshua, Anthony, Chris, and Marcin. I mean, if that's 5 people doing that,
hey, Israel
be
too.
amazing.
I meant to do it here in Seattle. I didn't mention my name, but
I
I have
wow.
interest in it too.
Okay. So
I
you're
I can't access the document, but
okay. That's awesome. I mean, if we have 6 people doing that from one, that's an amazing accomplishment. So, yeah, let's keep going at it. I think it's about continuing the process, just seeing that it's possible. By all means, it's possible. It just takes the work, just diving down and doing the hard work that it takes to get there. So, but let's continue, and let's meet again on Friday for the design sprint and treat it as a product demo, where we basically say, okay, what we did, report what we did and what new thoughts we had, and how we can get all these things on the road. There's multiple paths. Take a look again at the viral replicability criteria, the design spreadsheet, see what's missing, start your log, start contributing, and eventually we can much more easily, by good example, show the rest of the world how this process works in reality, in an effective fashion. And we have to build up to that nice, big design sprint team where everybody knows what's going on. So that's all to be. Yeah, but I think that's about all for now. So I would say thanks so much for contributing, and get the word out. And we'll see you again on Friday. And this is recorded. Right after this, you go to the collaborative literacy webinar wiki page. You can show this to your friends, pass this on, keep spreading the word, and let's keep collecting data and making it happen. So I guess thank you for the time, and let's continue. And this will be
Bye. Good night, everyone.
right after this.
Thanks, Marcin.
It was great talking to you, everyone. It's good to see you all.